Jesus in the Temple, second series of Who is Jesus series this morning. Well, most of us, we are familiar with this narrative of the boy Jesus visiting the temple at the age of 12. And this particular narrative of young Jesus from Luke's Gospel is significant. It is significant because it is the only story from last week's story of Simeon and Anna. These are only two stories that we have about Jesus between his birth and his baptism nearly 30 years later. Evangelist Luke writes his gospel to Gentiles, to writing the group of Gentiles living in Asia Minor. Their context influences narrative of Luke, today's reading. And this writer, Luke, he aims to show that Jesus as an important and impactful figure in the story, in history, following the style of storytelling used in Greco-Roman biographies of his time. So the way he's writing from that literature way. Luke introducing Jesus as a young scholar, engaging in theological discussion with teachers in the temple. From this story, his age, 12 years old, it is significant in this narrative. The 12-year-old boy impresses skillful teachers with his knowledge. And this is a symbolic story of young prophet, symbolic story of future leader. This story echoes Roman heroic leaders, someone like Augustus. You may know him. So it has some connection with Augustus. In the story, Emperor Julius, he adopted his nephew Augustus, who received exceptional education at an early age. So he had this privilege, had a good education. And when he was age of 12 years old, only 12 years old, he gave funeral oration, eulogy for his grandmother, Julius Caesarius, sister of Julius Caesar. So sister of the emperor, he gave eulogy at the age of 12 years old. You can see he was very talented, well educated. Now, Luke demonstrates Jesus carries this kind of quality. Jesus has qualities that will make him extraordinary leader, just as Augustus became exceptional leader in the history. Luke is interested in introducing Jesus as superior as Augustus. Jesus is the new promised Caesar, appointed not by the Roman Senate, but by our God. And Luke wants his Gentile audience to believe. They believe that Jesus is the true Son of God and the successor to Augustus. Mary and Joseph, the parents, they were faithful Jews. They make sure to fulfill their duties as a parents towards their son Jesus. Like I mentioned last week, when Jesus was only 8 years old, Mary and Joseph went to the temple to name and circumcise their son. They also offered the Lord appropriate offering. Now they need to introduce Jesus to the Passover in Jerusalem, next festival. According to Jewish tradition at the time, Joseph is obligated. He needs to teach his son the Torah, the 5 laws. And the rabbis agrees that boy can start learning the Torah, the traditional law, about age 12 years. So he was about the age starting learning their tradition in their culture. Now Jerusalem was packed with Jewish worshippers from all over the world to celebrate the Passover. Usually this celebration takes about 1 week. The Jews also traveled in groups to avoid dangers on the road, such as thieves. The entire group had to watch over each other, particularly kids. So they traveled together, they look after each other on their way to Jerusalem. Mary and Joseph had relatives and friends in Jerusalem. They might stay with them during this festive week. After the festivity, the group began a long journey home. They're going back. Well, although it seems strange to us that it took Mary and Joseph parents took whole day to miss their son, find out the boy was missing. This would not have been unusual. Probably that would not have been unusual in his time. It was not uncommon for children to visit, children to travel with other families in the same caravan, and Jesus' parents would assume that their son was among the group. They thought that was the case. And we can all imagine Mary and Joseph's panic when they discovered their son was missing. They leave the caravan, rush back to Jerusalem. Well, it takes them 3 days. Took them 3 days of diligent searching to finally find their son. While they had been madly searching, Jesus had been sitting in the temple, carefully listening to the teachings of the rabbis. And Luke is telling us that all who observed Jesus, they were amazed at this boy's level of understanding, at the depth of the questions, answers Jesus shared with the teachers. But of course, his parents, they were not amused or impressed. Understandably, they scolded him for the great anxiety he has caused. Jesus, who wasn't intentionally disobedient, he seemed, although calm and unfazed, and he was saying, "Why were you searching for me? Did you not know that I must be in my Father's house?" Jesus asked. Well, the biblical commentators, they point out that up to this point, all the signs of Jesus' special nature of mission, all his nature and mission have been revealed through others such as angel, Mary, Elizabeth and Zechariah, and the shepherd. All the others revealed his special mission and character. But now, from that point, Jesus is beginning to have his own awareness. He was thinking about his own identity. In Jesus, there were vague realization of his own identity, if not his full vocation. In verse 46 says, after 3 days, they found him in the temple court, sitting among the teachers, listening to them, asking them questions. This simple yet profound scene captures Jesus at 12 years old, engaging with most educated religious leaders of his day. He is not merely passive, but actively participating. He was actively participating, listening, and asking questions. And this phrase, asking them question, this phrase inviting us to reflect. What kind of question would Jesus, as a 12 years old, have asked? What do you think? What kind of question did he ask? Certainly, as a devout Jewish boy, he would have asked about the Torah or its commandment. But knowing what we do about Jesus' divine identity, his mission, we can imagine that his question was not just academic question. They were likely deeper, probing, even transformative questions that revealing his growing understanding of his unique relationship with God and his purpose in the world. So to understand this moment better, we can turn to Erik Erikson. He's a psychologist. Erik Erikson, something called psychosocial development theory. It's a well-known one. Some of you know that. Psychosocial development theory. Erikson proposed that our lives unfold through 8 different stages, and each stage is characterized by a key developmental challenges, 8 stages. For 12 years old Jesus, that's the kind of diagram starting from infant to mature, old adult. There's each stage, and for 12 years old Jesus, this stage is about the identity formation. Between the age of 12 to 18, young people begin exploring who they are, what they believe, how they fit into the world. They begin to ask questions like, who am I? What is my purpose? What kind of person do I want to be? And during this stage, failure to establish a clear sense of identity, that can lead to confusion, that can lead to insecurity. However, Jesus demonstrates profound sense of purpose even at this young age. His presence in the temple court, asking questions, engaging with the rabbis, shows a remarkable confidence in seeking understanding about God, about scriptures, and about himself. But these are not superficial questions. The question he asked were likely the kind of questions that challenges assumption, provoke our thought, inspire reflection. Questions that not only help Jesus grow in wisdom, but also challenged the rabbis to think deeply about their faith. So this idea of deep, life-defining question brings to mind this story called 3 Questions, written by Tolstoy. We know him, Leo Tolstoy's famous short story called 3 Questions. In this 3 Questions, this book, in this short story, the king, you can see farthest sign, king, he is worried. King is consumed by 3 questions that he believes will ensure he never fails in life. He had these 3 questions and he wanted to answer from that. Those 3 questions he had was, what is the right time to begin everything? What are the right people to listen to and whom to avoid? What is the most important thing to do? He had these 3 questions. He wanted to find the answers for them. He sought answers from the wise men, but none of them satisfied him. He decided to consult a hermit known for the wisdom, who lives far away. Now he dressed as a commoner. King found this hermit digging a garden in the middle of the day. So king asked these 3 questions, but he didn't say anything. This hermit silence, he continued digging, he was working. And the king saw this hermit's fatigue, he was tired. King offered to dig for him. As king was working, this wounded man stumbled out of the woods. This bleeding man came, and king was tending this man's injury. He was caring for him, and he could save his life. Next morning, this wounded man revealed that he had a plan. He had planned to kill you. He had planned to kill the king because the king had executed his brother. The king seized his property. That was his way of revenge. But he was moved by king's kindness. He pledged loyalty instead. He was saying, I will be serving you from today. And then king asked again the hermit his question. And the hermit responded that he had just had his question answered. You got all the answers now. If you had not pitied my weaknesses yesterday and had not dug a garden for me, hermit saying, you have probably gone your way, then the man would have attacked you, and that you would regret it, not stayed with me that day. Therefore, the most important time was when you were digging the garden, and I was most important man, and the most important pursuit was to do good to me, something good to me. And later, the man came running to us. The most important time was when you were taking care of him. Otherwise, he would have died without having made peace with you. And what you did for him was the most important thing you did. So remember that he was saying, most important time is now, because it is the only time you can act. You have power to control. The most important person is the one with whom you are, because we cannot know what future holds. The most important thing to do is to do good for the person at hand, for this is the purpose for which we are here. And through his action, the king had already discovered answers to these old questions. And these answers resonate deeply with life and teachings of Jesus. Throughout his ministry, Jesus embodied these three principles. He taught important or present moment, saying, do not worry about tomorrow. He valued every person he encountered, whether a tax collector or Samaritan or child, and his entire life was dedicated to doing good, to healing, teaching, serving, and ultimately laying down his life for others. Now returning to our text in Luke 2, we can imagine Jesus' question in the temple. His question would have reflected this kind of principle, this same principle. So perhaps he would have asked something like, what does it mean to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind and strength? He would have asked this question, how can we truly love our neighbor as ourselves? What does it look like to live faithfully in the present moment? These questions were not just intellectual curiosity, but for understanding of essence of what it means to live a life pleasing to God. They were the questions that revealed his identity as a son of God and revealed his mission to demonstrate God's love to the world. So as we begin a new year together this morning, these questions challenge us to reflect on our own identity, reflect on our own purpose this year. Like Jesus, we are called to ask questions that go beyond the surface. We could ask questions like this year. How can we make the most of the present moment in our walk with God? Who are the people God has placed in our lives right now? And how can we love and serve them? What is the most important thing we can do today to reflect Christ in our lives? Erik Erikson's theory reminds us that our identity is not static. It's not just remaining there. It is shaped by the choices we make. It is shaped by the relationship we build. Jesus' example shows us that true identity is found not in the title, not in the achievement, but in our relationship with God, in our commitment to his purposes today. Tolstoy's story concludes. This three-question book concludes with King realizing the wisdom is not just about knowing right answers, but living them out, acting out, living them out. Similarly, Jesus' questions were not just getting knowledge about, but about embodying God's truth in his life. So as we step into this new year, let us take inspiration from both questions and answers. Get the inspiration from questions and answers. Let us live in the present moment, love the people around us, and commit ourselves to doing good. And in doing so, we will not only grow in our identity, we will but also reflect the light of Christ to the world in need. So may we, like Jesus at 12 years old, may we have the courage to ask the right question. May we seek right answers. And may we live in the fullness of God's purpose for our lives. Why don't you try? Why don't you try this in this new year, 2025? Amen.